Now this is the message that I've been trying to bring to people in all of my films, in everything that I've done since I began talking to you on these radio shows, and since I began making the films and putting them on YouTube and posting them on the Crow House website. And this is the message that I tried to bring to people in my film The Awakening. Ultimately, the message that I tried to get to people in that film was that as human beings, we are all in some way concerned about the state of our world. We face an enormous amount of problems on all levels of all modern societies, no matter from which nation you look at. So, in a nutshell, the questions for us all really become, why does our reality continue to be like this? How did it become like this in the first place? And how can the situation be remedied? Well, I firmly believe that the main cause of all the problems that we face is the repression of knowledge. The repression of the knowledge of what the true nature of reality is. I believe that this has been carried out by a very, very few people, a controlling hand that sits at the top, that manipulates most of what goes on in the world. And when you really look at the mechanisms of how this world is run, and even how our education and media systems are run to prevent people from getting information they need, it becomes very apparent that this is indeed the case. Now, having said that, a lot of people, when they look at this controlling mechanism and they think of this incredibly powerful hand at the top controlling it all, it becomes a daunting task for these people how to fix this situation. And the three common emotional states that people get into when they try to deal with this information is anger, frustration, or fear. Once they become aware that it is a reality, it's usually one of those three emotions. And many of them feel very powerless. Many people feel powerless to be able to do anything, to be able to take back control of their lives, because they see the system as simply being too powerful. And what I've been trying to present to people is the understanding that yes, it is a very powerful system, but what gives the system its power is us. We are the system. We are the ones who support this system by our compliance with these rules and regulations that have been laid out for us by these ruling bloodlines, these psychopathic bloodlines that have used this methodology and this constant use of Hegelian dialectic to control society, and they've been doing it for years and years, and hundreds of years, thousands of years. It's always Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution, the whole way. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This is Hegelian dialectic. This is how it works. I've talked to you about it very, very often. They create a certain situation, and then they create other situations in order to create the next situation, which then becomes the new thesis, and they continue again. It's a self-perpetuating system. They've been doing it for thousands of years, and this is how societies run, but it's always going in a certain direction. And it's always becoming more totalitarian. It's always putting control, methodically, putting control into the hands of fewer and fewer people. This is what we're seeing with the Copenhagen Treaty. If the Copenhagen Treaty is signed, if countries do support the Copenhagen Treaty, it will do nothing to prevent climate change. Climate's changed. Climate's been changing for over 4 billion years. It will continue to change. It's a climate. That's what climates do. They change. So the reality of the system that's being put in place with the signing of the Copenhagen Treaty, should this go ahead, is simply a private hand that will control all governments. A private hand run by the people who control the monetary system. This will be the controlling factions of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank gaining control over the governments of the world. That's what this treaty will do. You've really got to look at it on a deeper level, folks. We can fix all the environmental damage that we're doing, which has nothing to do with climate change. It's just something we need to fix anyway, just from a moral perspective. We shouldn't be doing this to the earth. We shouldn't be doing this to ourselves. We shouldn't be doing it to the human race. we shouldn't be doing hardly any of the things that we are doing to this beautiful planet that we live on. And we don't have to do any of these things. The only reason we are is because of corrupt corporate interests, which are basically puppeteered by the same people who run the IMF. So it's the same people that are doing all the damage. So they are the ones who created the problem, and now they're telling us that it's leading to global warming and it's all our fault. So now they're offering their solution, which is to completely lock us down in a totalitarian state to save the world that they have trashed. But that is essentially what this whole Copenhagen Treaty is. And I mentioned this last week. This is a private hand that will be controlling all of our governments. So this will be the taking of the last vestige of power that we as human beings have. When really we are just as powerful as the people who sit at the top, who are now taking our power away. And they're getting away with it simply because we are allowing it to happen. We don't have to do this. Especially when all the problems that the world faces can be laid squarely on the shoulders of the ruling hand. Ultimately, these people rule. These people have the say as to what goes on and what doesn't go on. So how are you and I in any way responsible for all of the environmental damage that's happened to this planet? Because I'm sure that most of us, if we were in a position of power, we would not do the damage that has been done. We just wouldn't allow it to happen. So that's where the problem lies. The problem with all of this lies with corruption at the absolute highest levels of our society, of our governments, of our industry. And this continues because we allow it. That's the trick. We have to stop allowing this sort of stuff. And this is what I've been attempting to help people to understand the true power that we have. It's in the understanding of this power that we have the ability to affect change. Now, even before, when I was saying that who's to blame and who is responsible for the problems that the world faces is this ruling hand at the top, well, that's true, but it also must be clearly understood that once we become aware of how this system is run, allowing it to simply perpetuate in the dysfunctional manner that it is now in simply makes us part of the problem. Our passive compliance to this system is helping create the world situation that we're facing. Imagine where the world might possibly be today if we had not been so subjected to the suppression of information. If the technology of people like Nikola Tesla, Victor Schauberger, Royal Rife, if this type of technology had been allowed, and if we had pursued humanitarian goals rather than economic goals, imagine the position humanity could be in now. Imagine the amount of spiritual enlightenment and universal knowledge that we could possibly have acquired by now if such technologies had been allowed to flourish and weren't suppressed by the monetary system and the banking dynasties. If these people hadn't been too scared to lose their grip of power, if they hadn't been so locked into false ego that they saw everybody and everything else as a false threat. Such lust for power, such control of financial interests has always spelled woe for the planet. And it is the support and the continuation and perpetuation of this type of system that can be clearly seen as the mechanism by which all of the damage to the world has been done. It isn't that money is bad, it's simply the monetary system that we have in place is designed to create exactly the type of world that we now find ourselves living in. Considering how to fix these problems can become a truly daunting task, because when you look deep enough at the situation, you find that the only possible way to make any real change is through a revolution in consciousness, a revolution in thinking, a return to self, a return to the connection self has to self. It's not anything we can go and hit with a stick. It's not a cure we can go and buy. It's not something we can go and pick off a tree. It's an understanding of who and what we are. That's what's needed. It's an understanding that we are quite literally all as powerful as each other. We are extremely powerful beings. We are powerful enough to create this reality that we are now in. And we are powerful enough to change it into whatever we want.